So I'm standing here at the base of Strickland Falls. This is where in a lot of people's minds the Hobart Rivulet sort of begins. Really it begins further up the mountain where the rain falls on the trees, moving through and over the rocks, where it comes together here in a confluence in a spectacular fashion. The water's very clean here. You can take a glass and you can drink it. And it's clear and it tastes good. The dog's not too keen, but she's just not in the mood. The point being that this is probably the last point on the Hobart Rivulet where you might be prepared to drink the water. Because after this, the city slowly and then thoroughly takes over. What happened to the Hobart Rivulet is the people of Hobart. Since colonisation, the city has been built along its shores, along its banks, and then over the top. And as we move further down the stream, out towards the Derwent River, you get to see the impact of a population of a capital city living on and on top of a fresh water supply. Hey, dog. So I'm walking directly down the rivulet here. I'm right in the middle of it all. This is the big water catchment area beneath the Cascade Brewery. The brewery, of course, is named after the waterfalls further up the mountain. This area here is designed to basically protect houses in South Hobart. If there was a big landslip further upstream or some big logs came rolling down on a flooded waterway, this big concrete thing we're on should catch them. That's the idea anyhow. But what I'll do is I'll take out my glass here and I'll have another look at the water. Okay, well, it looks pretty good. It looks like you could drink it, but I wouldn't. So I might take a sample for later, but yeah, I'm not going to be drinking this one. Come on, dog. So we're still in South Hobart, just further down the rivulet. On each bank here, there are willow trees, and they were planted by the English so that they'd feel more at home when they were settling the place and establishing the town. These things, well, they're not part of nature either, obviously. They're log catchers, and they're designed to catch any big bits of timber that would flow down on a flooded rivulet and take out the bridges below or any sort of buildings on either side. Now I'm going to take a sample and we'll have a look at it. It's definitely worth pointing out that the stream is a lot less polluted than it used to be. It used to be absolutely rancid, but it's still not too great. There's a lot of sediment in here, lots of things floating around in it. Some of it doesn't look completely natural. It's not too bad, but there is some discoloration. I'm not going to tip this one out because I'm collecting samples. And we're going to do something with them. Down here is the subterranean part of the Hobart Rivulet. It runs through the Hobart CBD. Began as some bridges and then some buildings were added and then more buildings were added. And before people realised, the Hobart Rivulet was lost. This tunnel wasn't built as a tunnel, it was built as an afterthought to deal with the flow of water that had been encroached upon by the buildings on either side. It's kind of a Ninja Turtle environment down here. It's not a romantic catacomb situation. There's graffiti on the walls, which is kind of cool. There's a lot of trash. There's a lot of darkness. there's also a pretty strong flow of water. That's what this is meant to do. It's meant to get the water from before the CBD to after. And I'll just take a sample. Yeah, there's bits of rubbish and things like that in this water. So I'll take it back with me. In a fairly real sense, this is where the Hobart Rivulet ends. Those two tunnels behind me, well, they were purpose built during World War I. There'd been too many floods down here, so they decided to actually redirect the flow of the rivulet. It was put into man-made pipes and sent off in a different direction. Instead of going off that way towards where the wharf is, it went off that way underneath the domain. I'll get one more sample. This is Evans Street as it is today, filled in and paved over with cars in each direction. And this is how the same spot looked before when the rivulet emptied into Sullivan's Cove. If we look at some satellite images, we get an even clearer idea. Here is the old course of the rivulet. And here is the newer man-made path constructed from plumbing, the stream hidden below 1,000 different things. So what we did in a very unscientific way was take those water samples and turn them into icy poles. The first one from Strickland Falls looks like it would if it came from a tap. The next one down at Cascade looks a bit murkier. The third one, which was from the lower part of South Hobart, well, that's got a bit of green matter in it, which I guess is sort of fine, but you still wouldn't want to be using it. The fourth one, which is from the subterranean part of the rivulet, actually has some sort of chocolate wrapper in it. I think that's a caramello koala bear. And the last one, which was taken just before I couldn't take any more samples, when the rivulet turns into the man-made tunnels, that's just sort of kind of dirty. But as you can tell, I'm not going to be using them as refreshments, and neither's the dog. This painting by John Skinner Prout from 1847 is titled Hobart Town Rivulet and Mount Wellington. It depicts the stream unbridled. The rivulet, as it was then, contained perhaps even more beauty than the mountain behind it. So this is the end. The Hobart Rivulet meets the Derwent through the Domain Tunnel. Opened in 1917, but was actually built the year before in 1916. The flow is pretty much stagnant. It smells pretty bad. And there's a sort of, you know, not to get too dramatic, but unjustness about it all. Most people who live in Hobart probably don't know that this is where the rivulet ends. And there's certainly no tourists that come here because there's not much to be super duper happy about, but it is what it is, and there's not too much else to say.